Okay, my wife and I own Artware Picture Framing. Okay, we're not affiliated with the fair. We sponsor the fair photography contest by doing these clinics and educational stuff. We started helping about 5 years ago. Back then, before the digital entry age, they would get 4,000 matted prints entered into this contest. And a good percentage of those would be turned in with a little 5x7 scotch tape to a board. And so we had to start teaching people what the proper presentation techniques are. And a couple years ago we started this clinic. It's a little bit different now with the digital entry, but to me it's even more important now to get your presentation absolutely spot on according to the rules. So our day today is specific to the fair presentation. Okay, we're not going to be talking about archivability and lasting for 100 years and those kinds of things. We're talking about the fair contest today and how to properly present your photos for the contest. I have been picture framing since I was 15 years old. My mother is a 30-year picture framer and art restorer. A lot of my other family have been in picture framing. I've owned Artware for 6 years. So I think I know what I'm doing. So, is there any questions so far? Okay, let's get right into this. Everybody get one of these sheets? We just made a bunch of copies of the rules. Okay, so that's what this is. On the rule sheet, there's the calculations I'm going to go over about how to cut a map. So, the little bit different thing that we're doing this year is listen. I'm going to go over a demo. We're going to cut a map. If you feel like you want to learn and you want to go try to do your own thing, you've got the materials to buy and then go out on the tables and play around for a while. If after I'm done with this, you say, no way, Jose, we'll do it for you. There's an order form back there and we'll take care of it for you for next week. Sound good? Good.
What do you mean you'll take care of it for us? In other words, if we just wanted to buy the mat and the mount, and we want you to cut it to a certain specification, can you do that today and we walk out with it?
No. No. Because we don't have enough time for that to do things for you. Because everybody that I brought, my 2 employees and then the fair helpers, are going to be very busy helping people how to do this and watching you folks with sharp things. So that's what we're doing.
So then is there a pickup time or you submit it to the fair?
I do not submit it, so we'll be picking it next week. Monday, anything I take in today, we'll shoot to have done Monday.
And where's
Dave's
your shop?
on Miramar Road. So if you need printing, Dave would take care of that. And matting and mounting would be us. So let's get started with what we're doing here. So everybody knows that your final product is 16 by 20 for the fair. That might be a what's called a full bleed photo, 16 by 20 mounted to a board. Or anything smaller than that should be matted out to 16 by 20. So if you've got an 8 by 10 print, we mat it out to 16 by 20. Is that clear for everybody? So what I guess what I should go over, who's thinks they want to do full bleed 16 by 20? Do we have any of those guys? One person? Okay. My recommendation, if you're doing a full 16 by 20, is to have a frame shop dry mount it. That means it's permanently affixed to the backing board. And it's trimmed out very nice, ready to go. Sometimes people try to roll tape back on itself and stick it to the board. It's going to fall off, it's going to buckle and look terrible for the show. So if you're doing full bleed, I recommend mounting it to foam core or gator board, which is a very hard board.
What's the difference between foam core and gator board?
Foam core is your typical backing board, which is great and works fine when you're putting a mat and everything. Gator board is it's just a little bit different composite, and it's extremely hard and much more durable. Whereas if you've got just the print affixed to the foam core, it's just not as durable. It's easy to dent. So, first things first, if you're going to cut a mat, you got to measure your image. Okay. Now the rules allow. Let's find it. So you guys all, let's just go through, let's start at display format. We'll just go through these rules real quick. Mount board, they call, is your backing board. So you can use foam, corrugator board, black, and that's for all of the color, black and white, or digital art photos, okay? It's the board that the print is affixed to, okay? It's your backing board. Remember that anything color borders, color mats, double matting, and color mount boards are not allowed. So you can't put a hot pink mat on your print no matter how much you want to. I'll explain, 4-ply or 8-ply is the thickness of the mat board. What we're dealing with today is 4-ply, okay? It's your average mat board thickness. 8-ply is double thick, and what that means is you get a much bigger bevel. A little bit wide, you almost get an 1/8 inch of a bevel. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. White. Okay. So let's begin cutting a mat. I'm going to go through that right now and affixing it to the back. First things first is you want to know your image size, okay? For this example, I'm going to mat to image, okay? I'm not going to show a border on this. So here's this image, okay? It has a little bit of a white border, but we're going to mat over into the image. Okay? So the first thing to do is measure it. Now, this is exactly 9 inches wide. Okay, I don't know if everybody can see that. Now, if I cut my mat opening exactly 9 inches wide, I'm going to have a little bit of difficulty lining up the edges. So I'm going to back off that 9. I'm going to make it, since I have a white border, I'm going to go ahead and make it 8 7/8. So that I just come in a little bit and kiss the edge, and it's a little bit easier for lining up. Does that make sense? Okay. So there's an example here for a 6x10 in those notes on the bottom right. And it goes through the math for that. I didn't bring a 6x10, so we're going to go with this, okay? You can scribble the 6x10 out and put in this image there. So it measures exactly 9 by 13.5. So what I'm going to do is make my note here. I'm going to go 8 7/8 by 13 3/8. So I just backed off 1/8 of an inch. Okay, that's our first thing. Next on the math is we don't have a lot of variables here because we know our outside dimension is 16 by 20 or 20 by 16 depending on our orientation. This is a vertical image, so we're going to say our size, our width first. If you get into that habit, your width by your height, it's a good habit to get into. Construction guys do it, and we do it at the frame shop. So that you know when you look at the size, if everybody's following that rule, how it's orientated, vertical or horizontal. So since we have that, we're going to take 16 by 20 and subtract from 16 by 20 our window size, okay? Okay, so what I did was I listed my 16 by 20, then I subtracted my image size, and this is what I'm left with. What I need to do now is divide both those numbers by 2, because that gives me my borders, side borders, top and bottom borders. What we're going to end up with is about 3 inches on the sides and 3.5 on the top and bottom, okay? So I pre-sized, I already took it, but we have, mat board comes in 32-inch by 40-inch sheets and 40 by 60-inch sheets. Today we've got 32 by 40 sheets. If you cut it right, you can get 4 16 by 20s out of 1 sheet of board. Okay? So I already pre-sized the board. I'm going to use white for this first example. Okay? This is one of the cheapest mat cutters on the market. Literally, you can, if you buy it online for, I think I saw it was the cheapest for like $75. Okay? Costco has it. Okay. I've got everything.
I can't really hear you back here. There's kind of too much noise.
Okay, I'll try to talk louder. So anyway, the point of me using the cheapest mat cutter on the market is we're trying to show you how to do this at home if you're interested, okay? Basically what you have is a bar that clamps the mat down. You have a little measuring system, and then this is the cutting tool, okay? So the first thing to do, we did that math, and so we're going to mark our borders with a pencil, because we just figured out our borders. You have to remember top, bottom, and sides, or you'll have the wrong borders twice. Okay, so this little guy has a little measure right here, a measuring tape. And you loosen this bar here and here, and you mark it. So I just marked it at 3 1/8 for my side borders. Okay. Once I did that, I tighten these little guys, push my mat board all the way in against this little fence, and then drew a pencil line. We're going to end up with 4 intersecting pencil lines when we're done, and that tells us where to start and stop cutting when we make our cuts. That kind of makes sense? Remember, you guys will have time to play with these out there. So I'm going to do, because this is actually a good example because typically you don't have even borders all the way around because you're squeezing your particular image size into a 16 by 20. So you're going to have different borders, top, sides, and bottom. Some people end up with 1 inch on the sides and 3, on the top and bottom or something, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You do want enough that you can stick the whole thing together and make it solid. I'm just going to mark this off real quick and I'll show you.
No, I'm just, yeah, wait to see what kind of shit you're looking at.
This does take a lot of practice to do this by hand. And a lot of anger, frustration.
So what is the benefit of cutting your own mat as opposed to just buying one big
That
mat?
good feeling that you made something on your own. So this is what you end up with. I don't know if you guys can, yeah, in the long run it's cheaper. It is cheaper. Can everybody see that? Yeah. Okay. Are you ready to cut yet? No. Measure this inside dimension. Make sure it matches what you started with. And that checks your math before you start cutting your board. I purposely overdraw the line. A lot of people want to stop right there, but that is going to help us for our guide when we start cutting. Okay. Everybody see that? I'm trying to erase it, made a mess. Here's how this kind of operates, okay? There's particular razor blades that go with the Logan mat cutters, and they screw into right here. This blade holds it. And when you're ready to start cutting, you press this down, it extends the blade past the base, and you pull and make your cut, okay? One trick to remember, we have these lines that we've drawn, these intersecting lines. So before the lines intersect, I'm going to set my blade down just inside the mat, okay? I'm not going to go all the way through the mat, I'm just going to kiss the mat. Then I'm going to pull it. Just when I hit the 2 intersecting lines, I'm going to push it all the way down, make my full cut, and then just at the end, when I hit the other 2 intersecting lines, I'm going to gently bring it up and back out of the cut. You're kind of doing this if I do this with my hand. I gently touch the blade to the mat, I hit my intersecting lines, push the blade down, make my cut, then I back out of the cut at the second 2 intersecting lines. Here's the reason you do that. If I go right to the 2 lines, push the blade down, and go all the way and do the same thing, you get what's called overcuts. This is really hard not to do for a while. It takes a lot of practice. An overcut means when you flip the mat over, you've cut it all, you've gone past where the corner is, and you made a little cut. Sometimes you see them and they're like that long. It's like, holy smokes. Most of the time you see overcuts about 1/8 of an inch because someone's just, and that's not it doesn't have to be a terrible thing to do a little overcut. You can take a little burnisher and kind of, rub that little cut together and just hide it a little bit, you're going to get those in the beginning a lot. You just don't want big giant ones. Okay, does that make sense? So you want, because we have two different border sizes, we want to leave this set to the last border size that I drew. And I'm going to cut both of these sides first, then I'm going to adjust this fence to this border size and cut those sides. Make sense? Okay. So, I'm going to do this. This has a little mark right here. It's really hard to see, but there is a mark here that shows you when you're on your pencil line. Well, my map moved a little bit.
How many images do you have? And you're getting excited over the thing? Yeah.
Okay, so I did cut through, and that's good. So I'm going to do the other side now. So, okay, so I'm about to start my cut. I gently push the blade down. My little marker is on my pencil line. I'll push it down, hold my mat steady, make my cut. Now I've hit the intersecting line, so I want to gently ease out of it. Hard to do this way. Stop. Make sure that I cut it through. I didn't. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it on the table. This is the proper position right here. So you got your left hand, your pointer finger on that little lever right there, and you're going to push it down and pull towards you. Okay? So now I'm going to reset the fence for my bottom and top border.
Is that a straight cut or a bevel?
This will be a bevel, which is another thing. Think about your bevel and how you're putting your mat board in, because you want all the bevels to be the right way. If you put the mat board in the wrong facing way, you'll get a reverse bevel on one side. So just move in one, clockwise, pick clockwise, and just go that way. So I got two undercuts. Just one. You don't want to. The piece that comes out is called the fallout. The reason that we call it the fallout is because technically you want it to fall out when you're done cutting the mat. If it doesn't, what you need to do is take one of your little razor blades, a nice new one, from your mat cutter. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to, from the face, where the top of the mat, I'm going to gently ease my little mat cutter blade inside between the fallout and the mat. And I want it to rest against the bevel. And I'm going to just kind of gently ease it in the corner, both ways, and pop that corner right out. Okay? Because if you go to tear it out, you get a big tear, right? So you don't want that in the corner. And then, if you've got a little funky corner, you can just take that little blade, make sure it's new, and just clean that corner up. Get a nice little bevel corner. Okay. And then double check it on your image. And here's my technique for mounting the print, okay? To me, it's the easiest way to do it. A lot of folks like to pre-size their backing board to 16 by 20, then spend a half hour trying to tape that image perfectly in the center of that 16 by 20 board, then get their mat and try to even up the sides, okay? I do a little bit different. What I like to do is, these pieces of foam core that we brought today are 2436, okay? You can easily get two 16 by 20s out of this, okay? So what I do is I kind of roughly judge where I'm going to end up with my mat board. It's always sized to 1620, okay? And I'll make a little mark. I'm giving myself plenty of extra room, okay, guys? Because I'll just say, okay, boop, you're going to be right about there. Then we're going to take this roughly straight and about center right there. Then we're going to do our double-sided tape. We're going to stick this down, then take our knife and cut the excess off, and we're ready to go. Everything's nice and even, nothing's hanging over the edge. Done deal. Does that make sense? All right, we're going to do that real quick. Now, a lot of folks that like to put tape on the back of the print and then tape it to the mat. That's the proper way so that the print hangs correctly and hugs the backboard is to actually tape the back of the print and hinge it, what's called hinge it to the back of the board. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that. There's a little diagram for that on that paper down the bottom. We have artist tape, which is good quality tape. It's acid-free, but it's also good, strong tape. Masking tape is not a good tape. Scotch tape, not a good tape. Those fail. So you want a good tape that's not going to fail on you. Okay? So we took two good-sized pieces of tape. What I do is just flip my image over, face down, and I put two pieces of tape with the sticky side facing out this way, right on the back, okay? Take some kind of tool. This is called a burnisher, or burnishing bone, okay? Or a bone folder. Crafty people use these all the time to make cards and whatnot. We use them to stick tape down really well. So what you want to do is take it flat on the surface and just rub along wherever you adhered that tape. And just get it down nice and flat. You get all the air bubbles out. Okay? So that's ready. So now I'm going to just kind of center it in the area where I predetermined, okay? Doesn't have to be perfect. Then I'm going to take the opposing piece of tape that I have. I'm going to tape that down against the sticky side that I left exposed. I'll show you. So I have that sticky part left exposed. I just want to do that. Burnish it down, and now we've got a nice strong mount. Okay? Everybody kind of get that? Next thing you need is good double-sided tape. Okay? 3M sells it. We have it here for sale today. There is a dispenser gun for this stuff, and that gun is like 40 bucks. You don't have to have it, so I'm showing you how to use just the tape by itself today. There's a saying that musicians have, and a lot of everybody says, you're only as good as your equipment. So we're working with the cheapest possible stuff today to help everybody on a budget. You can go up from here and get a whole frame shop at your house if you want. But it's not, it takes a little bit of practice working with this stuff. So you get your tape, and it has a leader on it for the gun. So you get to the part where the tape starts and roll it back a little. I'm going to do one here to get it started. You just kind of lay it down. You're going to surround your image with this double-sided tape. Alright, so I just laid 2 strips down. I use, for fair entries, we use a lot of double-sided tape because we don't want when they're hanging, these guys will tell you, they'll get them all hung, and then you have a warm day, and there's mats falling down, and there's prints falling down. So we kind of make them, ready to survive a nuclear blast for the fair entry. Okay. Normally we wouldn't use this much tape, but we're going to because we want to make them tough. I'm going to try to show you guys this way. So, start it here, lay it down, burnish it down a little bit, then pull the masking off, and it leaves my strip of tape. Do that again. This can become a mess when I pull it off. Everybody kind of see that? Okay. Let me finish this off. Again, it's practice. Okay, so now I got this good amount of double-sided tape all around the image. So this I have to do on the table to do it right. But what I want to do is take my finished mat board, and I'm going to kind of hover over my image because you just flop it down, it's going to stick to that tape and be a little messy. So I kind of hover just above it, get it right on position, right about where I want it, pop it down. If you're doing, you want to make sure you have clean hands or some cotton gloves, or you can grab paper towels to do this, because that's the worst thing. When you're at this point, you cut your mat, you're almost done, and you put a big old fingerprint in it. So here I'm at this point, almost done. Okay, I'm fixed. Mat looks good. We use for our cutting boards scrap plexiglass from the store, but you can get a mat cutting or a cutting mat or just something nice to cut on, or your nice table.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Why didn't you go ahead and take down the whole other three sides of that image onto the back?
Yeah, you just put tape on the top.
Oh, that's what's called a hinge. Yeah, it hangs down flat against it. You can do that. You can do that depending on the paper, but you can actually cause it to buckle if you put too much tape around. So if you have a good solid hinge at the top, you've fixed your tape well, that's a strong mount. Okay?
The mat holds the rest of it.
The mat holds the rest of it down. And the whole physics of it is it's got room to do a little movement if it gets warm. And the idea is that that piece of paper is nice and it's kind of hugging against the backboard like that with the hinge. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So this can be the tricky part. Need a good box cutter knife with a good blade. When in doubt, when you're cutting mats and you're cutting foam core, get a new blade in there. Okay? You don't want to be fighting a dull blade from the back shed that's rusty and installed it 30 years ago. So nice new clean blade. You can take your straight edge and line it up right with the edge of the mat and cut that way. I like to just use the mat as my guide and be very careful. You don't want to try to cut through foam core with one big tough cut. The reason being is you're going to go, and it's going to go like this. Do 2-3 cuts. Score it first, nice light touch, then go through, cut again, maybe cut a third time. That's how you get a nice clean cut when you're cutting foam core by hand. So I'm going to start up here. I'm using the edge of the mat as my guide. And I'm going to just go through. Cut it a couple times. I got my first cut. I'm going to cut my excess off. This is good for my next 16x20. So see how I cut that? We're right in line with the edge of the mat. It's going to look nice and clean. I'm kind of using the mat board as my guide.
Could you use like a regular X-Acto blade?
You can. I like the box cutter blades. They're thicker and stiffer. The X-Acto likes to wobble a little.
Yeah.
And I like just to hold a bigger thing. I like X-Acto when I'm doing We're modeling railroad, model railroad.
There's a really good cheap version at Home Depot that Husky makes that
Yep.
cuts really, really well. Costs like $3.
Okay, so we're ready. Done. How many of you want to give it a whirl?